One of the great things about COP is being able to finally meet people whose work you admire and are doing really important, interesting investigations into the aspects of heat. And today is no different. I'm here with Tolullah Oni, who's with the University of Cambridge and Urban Better, who has done some incredible work in Africa. I want to talk a little bit about around not just the intersection between air pollution and heat, which is really the intersection between heat and health, but how this actually works and how you bring people into this issue. So it's not just the data, but it's the messaging and how it happens, and how people internalize it. So I'm happy to have you here, Tolullah, and I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about some of the work you're doing in Lagos and Accra and elsewhere.
My work actually comes from a couple of things. So as I'm a public health physician, right? So my task in health is to prevent disease, right? Is to protect health and not to wait for disease to occur. But the reality is that a lot of health is made outside of the healthcare sector. I work on cities because that's where increasingly the majority of people are living. And I work primarily in cities in Africa because that is where the cities are growing the fastest, and it's the youngest continent. So the median age is 19, right? We have 70% of people under 30. So the potential to protect health and as a way to accelerate development is immense. But we have to do it in the urban environment. But I started noticing that in these very environments, when you're talking about, well, what are the health risks that people encounter? We're not measuring them, right? I mean, you can't change what you don't measure. So we started asking, well, how do we generate the evidence to understand what are the health risks, particularly focused on air pollution and heat in terms of our place, but also things like a food environment, and because these things interact. So what we breathe, how we move for work, for play, for where we live, what we eat. These are factors that influence our health. So I started saying, well, how can we take into account the dynamically changing environments to understand how these environments are impacting people's health? And I thought, well, young population, it's a no-brainer, right? So I thought, well, let's work with the young population to understand these environments. So the projects that we've got going in Lagos in Nigeria, in Accra in Ghana, and in Cape Town in South Africa is essentially doing that. So we wanted to understand what are the ways that we can work with the majority demographic, young people, to capture aspects of the air quality and the built environments that influence the health and climate risk, as a way of informing advocacy, informing policy, and critically of getting young people to be part of the decision-making process. So we did just that. We got them running through the city, right, to highlight physical activity as a really critical part of health. We also know that in public space, for you to be physically active, it has to be conducive. So it has to be clean air. It can't be too hot. It can't be underwater. These are the conditions that have to be in place. So they ran through their cities. They ran with wearable air quality sensors and understanding, and an app that understands, well, what are the lived environments? So what are they seeing as heat, health risks? And that could be sources of heat. It could be sources of air pollution. It could be climate vulnerabilities. And then we brought that together, and they interacted with that data to say, well, okay, this is what we're seeing. This is what needs to change. And this is how we can actually support and work with supportive governments to say, how do we hold you accountable? And how do we actually both shape what happens next, so we can be part of the decision making and saying, okay, here's where we need to monitor, but also we can tell you what our experiences are in ways, things that are affecting our health, and the adverse environmental things that we're experiencing, whether that's heat or whether that's air pollution, because these things are they're intertwined, right? And they can actually be part of the solution, because we really want to be part of the solution. So it's really pleased about that.
I would love to dig in on that, actually, because it's like you've planted the seed, you're delivering the soil, which is the data that's going to nurture that seed, but it's got to grow and it's got to expand, right? So I would love to hear if you have any like anecdotes or stories from students or from the young people that you've engaged in this project, and how they've taken what they've done with you and that fire that they've developed and the vision they see now. How are they taking that forward?
So we call them run leaders, because they were essentially we trained them to do this data collection, but they didn't just run with it by themselves. They recruited, so they led a pack, right? So they recruited, we helped them with advocacy toolkit, and they recruited a pack of people to run with. And there was also people joined publicly. So it could be some of their friends and networks, or people find out about it and join. Just actually today, because today is Decarbonization Day, and so we had a clean air run this morning to highlight the importance of this kind of conducive space to say, well, if we're going to decarbonize, well, the immense health co-benefits because we can, through non-motorized transport, also supports physical activity. So we ran today and we actually measured the air quality, and then we invited the run leaders in the different cities to also join, right, and do runs today from wherever they are, so they could participate. And I love this morning, one of the participants, not even the run leaders, so somebody that just joined, he came from an hour and a half out on the boundaries of the city to join their run. And he shared today, he went to his primary school and he shared this video wearing his Run Lagos t-shirt of educating teachers and students about why air pollution is so critical to their health, why, what the sources of air pollution are, what we can do about it, and why it's so important to measure it. He shared this and I thought, he's not even one of the people that we train. This is already a multiplier effect. So it's been, it's amazing. And then from the government perspective, because actually we really engaged them because they saw what we were doing on Twitter and they thought, how do we actually support this? Because, or how do we leverage this to support what we're doing? And one of the things that we're really excited about in Lagos is the next step of a follow-on from this, where we're building the air quality management system, and critically, we're building this participation. So when you think about air quality management, you think about heat, you think about sensors and measuring, but we're taking a different approach. We're saying, well, a key part of this management system are the people, right? So we're developing with them the participation of the young people as an integral part of the air quality management system, and that has come from this project.
What are the opportunities to link these different groups together to create a bigger network so that we're all hearing, we need to hear the youth, we're happy the youth is here? Well, you've got them.
Yeah.
So how do we make that network connection so that people are doing that beyond just their city, but thinking continent-wide, thinking globally?
The broader goal is the Pan-African citizen sensing infrastructure. And one of the things that we actually did was, for this, we built an interactive data platform that brings together the data from the sensors with the data from the app, which is the photos, the videos, so you can actually interact and see what the sensors measured, but also what people were experiencing whilst running, right? Then you can zoom out from your city, and then you can see, well, what happened in another city. And so actually, as part of them developing the advocacy messages, they weren't just looking at their city for this project. It was like, okay, how does that compare? Oh, this city is, we had more red bits, and look at the experience. We've not left our city, but we can zoom in and see the lived environment. Yeah. And this is the vision, right? The vision is that we can say, we can have this comparison, but it's not just for action in the city. And I work at the University of Cambridge, as you say. A really critical part of building this pipeline and this capacity is building the data infrastructure, so that we can actually say we're training the next generation of climate research activists who have the data to say, okay, I want to understand how green cover has changed over the last 5 years in my city, and I want to compare it to 3 other cities over the last 3 years. We don't have that information at the moment. Yeah. But if we build the kind of citizen sensing infrastructure that you can be part of putting the data in, but you also have access to this longitudinal data to understand how things are changing and build this network. I talk about aspire, inspire, conspire. That's what we need to do, right? We need to aspire for a different way, right? Thinking the cities differently. The data is the inspiration, right? We can't inspire if we don't have input, right? And we need to conspire, right? And that is recognizing that we can't do it on our own, either as individuals or single cities. And we need to conspire together to understand what is possible, because we can really shift that mindset. It seems impossible until suddenly you see what is happening in a similar city. You think, well, if they're doing it, how can we share learning, share knowledge to understand what works, what hasn't worked, so we're not starting from scratch every time. So that is what's really exciting about this, that potential to scale, yes, to replicate, but also to scale in a coherent manner.
Well, Tolullah, I have to say, it's so invigorating, especially when we face the climate we face, to see people that can take two what are oftentimes considered very dry topics, air pollution and heat, and find the passion and the importance in this, and also bringing folks into this, so that you're not just igniting their hearts, you're filling their heads to actually go out and do this. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.